Okay, 102 by mine. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for your attendance. This is the beginning of, oh man, is it the fifth year that we've done the Pre-Retiree Academy? A lot of people put some time and energy on our team into this. It's definitely not just me. And so thanks to everybody on the scenes, behind the scenes that have really helped bring this together. We've continued to get positive feedback from it. So without any more ado, let's get going on this, everybody. So um, just for everybody to know, my name is Hunter Nighbert. I'm a financial advisor and retirement planning specialist with MCF Advisors. And if you're on this call, you are a participant in one of the plans that we are the plan consultant. We serve two main functions. The first one's plan governance. That's assisting the retirement plan committees in all things running your plan. A tremendous amount of information that has to be kept and done correctly in accordance with the law. And so we're here to help those committees with all the things that it takes to run the plan. And then number two, which brings us to almost to the creation of this, is we're here to help you guys facilitate a positive plan outcome. What does that mean? That's where you all, the participants, are armed with access to information, education, and access to one-on-one independent advice, so you can make the best decisions that you can, hopefully, so you can retire when you want to. On my screen, or in your screen as well, let's make sure that is. Yeah, make sure on your screen as well is my contact information. There's my email, my direct phone number, as well as a link to my calendar. Please, if you have any questions about any of the content or any questions specifically that I can help you with, I'm here as a resource for you in particular. If there's specific questions to the content, please shoot me an email. I will try to make sure that I have questions or content that helps match those questions as we go along. I will be happy to add that as well. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get going is that number one, all the content that you're going to get over the next 8 weeks, it's designed where we're going to have at least two pieces of content, but mostly two pieces of content per week. There are 5 live opportunities to catch this. All of these webinars will be recorded, and they will be placed on this website right here. And it will be there and available to you until we take it down at the beginning of next year. So, obviously we all have jobs and you have stuff that you have to maintain, but if you miss something, you're able to come back and access that content in the long term and hopefully digest that as you need to. Also, if you have questions during this, feel free to use the Q&A feature. You just go below, hover your cursor below the video on my screen. It will bring up the Q&A. Type your question at the end. I will review as many of those as time allows. You can also ask questions in the chat feature. I've opened that up so everyone can see as well, and have copied the URL for the website that we place all the content on. Okay. So, a question from plan sponsors and participants is number one, what facilitated us creating really this targeted learning foundational opportunity for you all? Well, the real reason, I'll talk to you a little bit about retirement first, but retirement is different today than it was in previous generations. Retirees used to be able to count on really almost one solely source of income between that and Social Security, and that was a pension. And often that included full health care benefits for them and their families. And that's over periods of time with some, relatively subdued inflation. And while there are some employers, including participants possibly on this call, that are still offering pensions in the workplace, the predominant savings vehicle switched from a defined benefit plan, those were the pensions, to defined contribution plan, which are things like the 401k, 401as, 403bs, that all of you all participate in one way or another. And that's really where it becomes on the employee to really save for themselves, and they may or may not receive an employer match depending on the plan. And because the older generations, my grandparents, your parents, our parents, did not grow up in this environment, there really has been nobody to teach you as the current generation that is getting ready to enter into retirement and continue to enter in retirement over the next few years. And with the increase of life expectancy, which is a blessing, but it also presents a challenge for employees with the prospect of savings maybe not lasting long enough to cover that life expectancy. We now live 10 years longer than our parents, 20 years longer than our grandparents. Life expectancy has been holding about the same place for a while. It takes a while to move that needle. Certainly coming out of COVID, as an aberration, really did have a little bit of effect on that. But really, while you and baby boomers and Gen Xers continue to retire, there's a whole lot of things and information that we have to wade through. And that's really the genesis of this. We have to look at things like Social Security and pensions, and our own defined contribution plan. And that's the challenge, like taking all these sources of income, and you take a lifetime of your savings or the predominant, savings, and you have to convert that into a stream of income to last your life. And all of you all have heard me say it. You're going to hear me say it again, but there's three questions everybody has to answer when it comes to retirements. How much money do I need? And what I mean by that is, how much money do you need to live the way you want to? And more specifically, how much are you planning on pulling from your savings when you do it? Number two, when do you need it? When are you going to start pulling from that savings? And then number three, the last answer is, for how long? And man, if we knew the answer to that, this would all be easy. Meanwhile, our children, your kids, our kids, they have a totally different scenario because we've been going through this and learning to do it. And so you've got, kids in their 20s now that are climbing the corporate ladder. And if they're, hopefully they're saving about 15% of their gross income, including the employer match. And they don't have to think about it. When they're hired, they're automatically enrolled in the company's 401k. And then they're usually automatically directed to start at a certain level to get the maximum match. And then a lot of employers are going to auto escalation plans that allow you to increase it by 1% a year until you kind of hit that max of 15 as a total. And you don't even have to think about it. And they don't have to know exactly what to invest in. And now we have managed options like target date funds and portfolio options that certainly weren't available 20, 25 years ago. And so the whole system has gotten better. We've gotten smarter. We've learned. And so now we can continue to do that and pass it on to the next generation. But at the core of, like, really the very basic genesis of that, it's I've been with MCF for 10 years now. I've been working in this current role for over 5. I've been working heavily inside the group space for more like 13. And it struck me when I really got in, how many people just don't know, like, the first step to take next. And that's not on you. Like, that's not your fault. And some of those are simple, and this is a really common question, by the way, but it's as simple as, okay, I'm going to retire, but, like, how does that even work? Like, how do I access my money? Like, where does that even begin? Like, what is the process to that? And it's really questions like that. I was like, there's so many people that this affects. And so I think we can help. I think we can create this foundational opportunity to raise awareness of the things that you should be looking at as you're getting ready and preparing for retirement. And that's really it. It's really just answering those questions because you're not alone. Everybody, has these things in one way or the other. And so I thought, well, um, let's take this problem to my team, and the team, we came up with this idea, and it's gone really really well. And whether it be the questions of how do I access my money, or will it last long enough, or when should I take Social Security, and how do I register for Medicare, or those kind of things. So really, hopefully, when this series is done, I think you'll have a better understanding of some of those questions that make you uneasy, and maybe have a better really grasp at this whole thing. And I think you will. That's the why behind it. Some of you have probably heard, in terms of education that I've done, but you often heard me draw a parallel between taking a trip or a journey, an adventure, and or retirement. Taking a trip requires planning. How are you getting there? What routes are you going to take? How long will that travel take? Do you need to stop and stay along the way? What food will you bring or buy? Um, could weather be a major impact? Like all of these things. What type of clothes are you going to need? Are you going to need both warm and cold? And what's really interesting is that when we think about vacations and those kind of things, we plan so many things routinely in our life. You know, the last vacation I took, I just didn't wake up and go and figure out how much it was going to cost along the way. I mean, I might have done those kind of things over like a weekend spontaneously, but not like a true vacation. And so, you know, all of this takes a modicum of planning. But interestingly enough, when it comes to retirement, people often don't approach it that way. And so I'm going to help try to change that perspective for you a little bit. At least we don't until we start getting closer to the age of retirement. And I get that. That's just part of kind of how it works. But hopefully that stimulates a lot of y'all to start doing that. Ask yourself this question. A lot of you that are on here, I got quite a few people. I can see the numbers on there have jumped up. About 60 people on this right now. Um, have you started? Have you started looking at things? So let's go over some topics that we're going to cover throughout this whole 8-week period. And then, some things might catch your eye more than others. That's okay. Everybody has a different, we're all approaching this from our own perspective, which is different. Obviously, I told you that we're going to be covering a number of these through live webinars. There will be recorded webinars. There are PDF article type style contents, PowerPoint presentations that we'll send that will help you digest that, and worksheets. We've got one major big one at the end to really help you kind of put it all together. But we'll have a couple over the next couple of weeks they'll come to you as well. So again, if you have any questions on this. Today, obviously the title's Charting Your Course to Retirement, which is really just like gathering data to start with, gathering data, kind of trying to figure out what all data that we need to get, what we need to figure if we don't have certain things. So we'll talk about that in a second. Later in the week, or the beginning of next week, you'll also get a spreadsheet that you can use, simple on Excel, that helps gather that data with you, taking stocks of your assets and liabilities, creating your own net worth statement. It's kind of handy to have for a couple of different reasons. And then you'll get another tool to help you with budgeting, creating a budget for your retirement, and those kind of things. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Then you'll get a PDF module on understanding Social Security benefits, really high level, basic. Social Security gets very complex and very minutia. We kept the the bar high in terms of just understanding the basic questions that you'll need in terms of claiming it, how it works, strategies that you can take, on different things, those kind of things. Um, Retirement withdrawals. We will talk about distribution planning specifically. I'll do a live webinar at the 1st of April on that. And then we'll have a recording on tax planning basics, just the very basics of things that you can think about when you're covering your taxation in retirement. Evaluating your risk. So as we, go into retirement, are we taking risk that's appropriate, or are we taking risks that we shouldn't take, more importantly? And then, continuing to add to those savings. We'll have another live opportunity in which we'll have a one-on-one with an estate attorney that's here in Lexington that joined our firm. Ramsey Watson will be in for a one-on-one conversation style webinar with that. And then we'll also have some stuff on life insurance. We'll do another live on Medicare basics in terms of that. And then maintaining a plan and or possibly working with an advisor, but really just kind of help wrapping up all of this stuff, putting it together. It's all designed to where you can do all of this on your own and those kind of things. Okay. So that's it. We're gonna get going. So I don't keep you too long today. I'm gonna try to keep these to under an hour, including questions. So if there's any content, anything amongst those subjects that you are interested in hearing specifically, please shoot that as a message, and I will really be happy to kind of either incorporate that or get back to you in specifics of that. And then I'll also say everybody that takes part in the Pre-Retiree Academy, they'll all just like normally, you'll still have an opportunity to set up a one-on-one appointment, and then talk really specifics about stuff that applies to you. So not only are we going to cover foundational topics like we just mentioned, we're also going to cover some risk as we go in some of those modules, things to be, heightened sense of awareness for, and so these are 5 risks to retirement that really never change. The first one is longevity. Outliving our money could be an issue for some. So really having that tight spending plan to really combat that. Healthcare expenses. I keep this on here. If you approach it appropriately, it's really not a great risk. But what happens if we don't account for that extra money that's going to have to go to your healthcare expenses as we get older? I have seen some miscues on that in terms of that. And some of that for some people on the call, it might be just swapping out. Some people might get their house paid off as they go into retirement, and others do that. You're kind of going to swap that in some ways for healthcare at some point in time, hopefully later than sooner. Inflation, obviously a big topic over the last few years with the inflation that kind of really went up starting in 2022, 2021. It's post-COVID world and those kind of things. Inflation is much better today. But it is still a risk that we need to kind of be aware of, because you can be too conservative, and then really your buying power in the future gets completely eroded because of inflation. Something for sure. Asset allocation. It's really more about the risk you shouldn't take more than the risks that you can. And so we'll talk about those specifically when we do that in those models. And then obviously excess withdrawal. Spending too much too soon is a recipe. It's a great idea as we walk into retirement, is having to understand, like, this is what our basic need expenses are. Perhaps this is what we're going to spend, and then keeping it there, having bumpers built in, so if you're between this and this, you'll be okay from a longevity standpoint. But early excess withdrawal can really be problematic. Really, the whole purpose of all of this is really to increase your retirement readiness. And what is that? That's your ability to live the retirement lifestyle that you desire. And if you don't know that, we're gonna work on that. And determining factors that go into that is how much your Social Security is going to be, if you have pension benefits, obviously. Additional benefits in your own retirement plan might be there, healthcare costs, and really emotional readiness is a larger component as we walk into retirement than what a lot of people want or really plan for. Really having to fill that void. And I know for a lot of people, it seems like this will be easy, but it's harder than it sounds. Work brings purpose to us. It is a means to an end. I understand that, but there's also a level of socialization that we get from that and enjoyment that we get from those things, relationships, and that changes a lot. And so you have to be prepared for the emotional component of it too. So when we talk about retirement readiness, a lot of you have seen this number, this replacement income ratio. And, you know, that's one of the questions that I get is, how much does it, take to retire? Well, that answer is different for everybody. And really, the real answer of how much money you should have saved is it's really directly proportional to how much you have or that you plan to spend. So, you know, understanding that, number one, we're going to get to that, trying to figure out a specific number that you're planning to spend. I think it's best if you do that. Um, if you don't know that and you're on the younger end, then it takes a while to get that. Then an easy rule of thumb is to just to say, I want to replace 80% of my income in and through retirement through the various sources of income. We'll talk about that in a second. What we see is that people who are able to achieve that 80% or higher don't have a lifestyle adjustment. I will say that it is a little bit of a moving target. I've seen people that replace income at 70% and able to maintain their lifestyle. But I've also seen people at 75 and that haven't. It kind of swings both ways. 80% is a number that really can kind of get you there. That's if you're pre-retirement income. So if you're making $100,000, you need to figure out a way that you're going to be able to replace 80% of that when it comes to it. When it comes to all of your sources of income. So speaking of those sources of income, let's dive deeper into like where all of these sources are going to come from. A secure retirement often depends on several different sources of income, like the one shown on the screen: Social Security, personal savings, um, uh, retirement plans, qualified retirement plans like pensions, 401ks, IRAs, or other assets or savings are examples of that. Income that you might get from assets is important. Someone on the call might have rental property. You might be able to use portions of that money, obviously, that you can take as income. I wouldn't count 100% because obviously rental properties have to be updated from time to time. That's why I stress a portion of that. And you will, if you're already doing that, that world better than I do in terms of your own particular um, uh, properties and those kind of things. Social Security usually is anywhere, depending on your income range, it's anywhere between 15 and 30% in terms of the amount that is going to fund in terms of that 80% replacement. So in other words, Social Security by itself often doesn't lend itself to get you where you need to go. It and 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 that's not shouldn't be surprising. Social Security was always designed to be a safety net, so to speak. So um, it'll be really important to kind of start gathering information if you don't know on Social Security. So or any of these other assets. That's where we're going to start putting those together on paper and creating that net worth statement. Social Security, if you don't have a statement or don't get statements from that, I would say the best place to go is to ssa.gov. create an account, a login, you'll be able to do that. You'll, have all the information at your fingertips that the government does, and in order to capture that. If you create a login, then you can pull a statement at any time. You're going to see what your benefit's going to be at 62 and at 67, and then again at 70. It also have disability information on there, if that, was applicable. What you need to know is that, full retirement age for most people on this call is around 67, could be just a tad bit higher, anywhere from 66 and 8 months to 67 and a couple of months for some people. But that's usually where it sits. If you take it out, if you elect to choose to take your Social Security before that, it's at a discount, 8% a year, specifically. So let's look at this. Let's look, in general, this is from the Social Security Administration, that really came out with, what the averages are in terms of income. So in the green, this is from pensions and Social Security, and then the blues are from either earned income, or income from your investments, and those kind of things. You're going to ask this question at some point in time, but do you have enough to retire? And the only way to ask that is to do some math, but not only that, are you in a position to stop working? In other words, where are you at in terms of that? Will your retirement expenses, what are they going to look like? Are they going to be different than what you're doing today? More, less? What will your healthcare costs be? You're probably not paying great in terms of healthcare costs today, hopefully. But you need to assign a value, and when you retire, really has an effect on that. If you retire before you start taking Medicare out, then I usually tell people to budget for $1,000 a month, and that's for the insurance component of loan. In terms of that, once you get to Medicare, it changes greatly. Then your outlay, for supplemental, will be in the, likely to 300 or 250, depending on you, to $500 range, depending on your, medications and that kind of stuff. Usually that doesn't start maxing out until you start getting into your upper 70s in terms of really what that's going to look like, from what I've seen. Do you plan to have like a side job? I know I've talked to a lot of people on calls that are going to retire from the grind, but really are going to do some part-time work, whether it means consulting or something totally different, but they're planning on working maybe say 15, 20 hours a week. So incorporate that into it. And, do you have enough saved to kind of maintain that lifestyle, and really how long with a reasonable return factor to that money, plus what you're spending, how long will that money last? So besides all the information that you need to start pulling, it really does start. You heard me say earlier, the amount that you should personally have saved is directly proportional to how much you're planning to spend. Budgeting is a sampling and an allocating for all of your income, your inflows and your outflows and expenses. So a budget is a plan. If you don't know exactly what your inflows and outflows are, then a really good place to start is tracking. Start by tracking it. If you're really unsure, 2 to 3 months usually captures most of your spending habits. And then once you're tracking that, you have a handle on what is coming in and what is going out. Then you can really look for the next portion, or the next part is really creating a budget. And I know no one on this call likes me to say that. I get it. Some people love it. It's usually one or the other. Some people are really planners, very detail oriented by nature, and so that stuff kind of lights us up a little bit. But a lot of us do not like that premise. They do not like that understanding, and the reason is because budgets make us feel constrained. I've I'm going to challenge everybody to skip that mindset because number one, you need to know that honestly to have, to have the most specific information for your retirement, having a budget, having an understanding of what you're planning to spend is important. But I need you to flip your mindset if you're one of those people. I'm one of those people by nature. If a budget makes you feel constrained, you need to flip the mindset. A budget should make you feel empowered. Um, because a budget allows you to account for where all those dollars are going in a meaningful manner. So we have to kind of get out of that, this is constraining us. It's really giving you empowerment and control. Okay. So let's start first by gathering that data. Um, you know, your income minus your expenses, that's going to give you your net cash flow, your ability in terms of savings for specific things. I would also encourage you to keep that net worth statement. That's why we gave that to you first, so you can start accounting for, everything that you have in terms of savings, in terms of assets, um, but also, debts go on there because, net worth is just your assets minus your liabilities. Um, the reason I like having that, number one, because it helps gather the information of everything on two. But if you're going to do a budget, I really like tracking net worth with it, especially if you're making meaningful moves in terms of savings or paying down debt. It's a sacrifice. This is hard. Like you all been doing great. We all intuitively know we have to do this, but when you're trying to reach to a goal, um, it you're making a sacrifice by tracking the net worth and the deployment of that net cash flow. Um, and tracking the net worth, you'll be able to see in reasonable real-time data, whether you update it all the time or monthly or quarterly, you'll be able to see it. When you put money down on debt, your net worth goes up. When you save more, your net worth goes up. When you spend more or take on more debt, your net worth is going to drop. So intuitively, if you're going to make the sacrifice, having that net worth, tracking that with it is good for honestly our mental health of giving us reinforcement of what we're trying to do. It's real-time data in terms of reinforcement. So once you have started with that, you've gathered the data, create that budget, create that spending plan. Once you know what your net cash flow is, then you can start to deploy it, whether it be paying down debt so you can walk into retirement debt free, if that's what your goal is, or saving more if that's what you need to do in these last few years of retirement. Everybody's busy on that. And then, of course, we a plan is only as good as if we follow up and see what we did well and what we fell short on, right? So, some people call it like an autopsy, in sales, they have what's called a sales autopsy if you don't, complete a sale. In this, it's a budget autopsy if something fails. Like you got to figure out what went wrong and what you can do to correct that. So not only is it enough to create the budget, we have to monitor that and make sure that it's working from time to time. Okay. Not front page news, I understand, but it's important that any plan you have is not a one and done thing. This is constantly having to be looked at, financial planning included. So once you have a budget, everybody can prioritize that budget. Obviously, needs, in terms of this pyramid, make up the greater part of that. Some people use like the 50-30-20 rule, 50% for your needs, your basic stuff, 30% for your wants and 20% for savings. I'm more of honestly, either a 50-25-25 or a 50-20-30, depending on where you're at. Because we all want these things in the wants. We want vacation. We want, to have the ability to dine out. Those things are extremely important. So we need to budget for them as well. And then, of course, the retirement savings and those kind of things as well. If you're mentoring people in your life and they ask you about retirement, you can just tell them the number one factor of what your retirement savings looks like upon getting there is your overall savings rate. That includes the match, but your overall savings rate, that's the number one factor. Investor behavior is number two. We can learn those things. Savings, we kind of have to get to. And so any mentoring that you do in your life, I would pass that on for anybody in your center of influence. Um, Healthcare expenses. So now that you have a basic spending plan, again, I want to go back and kind of be a broken record. Have you accounted for everything? Have you accounted for a number for healthcare? This is a 2024 study that Fidelity did saying that a 65-year-old couple will spend as much as 330,000 over their lifetime from 65 on for healthcare. I think I mean, that Fidelity's great at what they do, but that's almost mind-boggling to some people. So we really have to, and that's encompassing. So out of pocket, spending for your Medicare Part B's and D's as well. Drugs, all of those things, surgeries, care is encompassed in there. So make sure that we account for that, right? Um, and again, some of that you're just going to be swapping expenses. As you get into your upper 70s and 80s, I promise you'll start to slow down. It's just what I see with most of my clients. I hope you don't. I hope you're playing pickleball and traveling the world at 83. I've seen it. It happens. But the vast majority of us, I think, start to settle in and just become a little more comfortable in our space in our upper 70s. So some of those costs start to swap, less for entertainment, less for those other things, and it will start to shift over to healthcare. Just make sure that we're accounting for that. Inflation, we've got to account for it. There's some easy ways to account for it, and I'll talk about that when we're talking about asset allocation, distribution planning a little bit. The biggest risk for inflationary risk is being too conservative in your instruments. I'm not saying that you can't be conservative. Um, that's a numbers game. You certainly can. But being too conservative, meaning, maybe you want to put them all in CDs and do like 3.5% or three, you can get pretty good, decent rates today. But the expected inflation over time from the Fed standpoint is 2.5. It's tiny bit above that right now. It will eventually go below that in terms of today's terms. This is a graph that kind of shows you the difference of what 2%, 3%, and 4% over a 25-year period really does in terms of that. So what the slide reveals, example of $50,000 living expenses today in 25 years at a 2% inflation rate is going to be like 82,000. And really so on and so forth. So I mean, it really settles in between these two numbers. And when you're too conservative, you don't have appropriate mix of things that will help hedge that inflation risk. It can be an issue. It can be an issue because it erodes your buying power over time. This is the silent one. This is kind of like death by paper cuts. You wake up one day like, man, eggs are as expensive as they are, and I hate to use that as an example, but that's kind of how it works. Um, Additional things that you may or may not be on your radar, that when you're creating that budget, when you're thinking about those expenses in retirement, are you going to relocate? Are you going to stay in the same area of which you are? Most people do. Are you going to go somewhere different? It's not uncommon for grandparents to move towards their grandkids. Got a lot of clients that's happened to. How does that affect you though? Start thinking about those things. If you have kids that live in a populated area, it might cost you more. Start kind of thinking about how those things are going to affect you. If you're going to stay where you're at, home improvements, that's the only, the thing about owning a home is that there's always work to be done on it, and so not full on renovations, just sometimes just general upkeep. Obviously, vacations. Are you going to spend more time in warm weather in the wintertime, as an example? Hobbies, golf, fishing, those kind of things. If you already do those things, I'm sure most of you do, then you can gauge about how much that's going to cost you. If you do it extra, how much more. Caring for aging parents, man, this is a big one, guys. Uh, I'm Gen X. We're in this what's known as a sandwich generation, where I've got a kid in college and taking care. I've got My father's passed already, but my mother will be 82 this year. She's still doing pretty good, but man, I mean, there's some issues always as we kind of get older. And some of that, it depends on what position your parents are in, but that will, if nothing else, take time, I assure you. And then obviously spending time, the fun stuff, grandchildren. Some of you might, be eyeing having a second home. Maybe, maybe not. But we need to look at all of those things as part of it. Again, net worth. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So in week 3, you're going to get this template that's going to come. It's a really nice, slick Excel spreadsheet. Looks kind of good. It's got brings it to like a main net worth page. It looks pretty good. Got some color to it. But assets, these are things like your checking account, savings account, retirement, brokerage, or investments, real estate, automobiles, anything of value, like good value, collectibles in some cases you can put on there, but be realistic with it. I mean, I have baseball cards from when I was a kid. I don't think it's worth a whole lot. I've got a couple that are worth something, but I don't have it's not worth a whole lot more probably in realistic than it was when I was a kid. Some are. I'm not explored that space, but I know where they're at, kind of thing. Um, Liabilities, consumer debts. So this is everything: credit card, car loans, personal loans, any student loans. Hopefully, you not walk into retirement with student loans. I hope not, but some of you could. Mortgage loans, any debts, anything that you owe. We need to account for those things. Before I wrap it up and take questions here, just remember, we've got to start by gathering the information around us. We have to gather everything that we've saved. We have to come up with a spending plan, and then obviously really tracking that network is really good for that spending plan, especially in the years leading up to retirement. So we can, if you're 55 and you're joining us for the first time, the reason we made that age 55, we have some plans that went down to 50, by the way. But the reason we did that is so we can start getting these things into your head. So if you need to make adjustments, you still have the runway to do that. Remember the questions: how much do I need? When do I need it? And the last is for how long? When I need it can be working a year longer. There's a lot of levers that we can push to make sure that this is successful. But we want to give you enough runway that if you're behind, that you can make the sacrifices to catch up. And don't look at it as giving up something today. Yes, you're giving up a little, but you're paying your future self. And there's value to that as well. Lastly, this is what the timeline is going to look like for the content release. So today is the welcome, charting your course. We'll have that set your retirement budget for next coming out next week, along with taking stocks of assets and liabilities. Then we'll have another live webinar, the drawdown equation on the 1st, assessing portfolio risk, understanding your Social Security, bolstering those savings, giving you creative ways of what you can do to kind of make it better. Tax strategies, that recording will be coming to you on the 17th. Reviewing life insurance and long-term care as an option. Don't spend a whole lot of time on life insurance. So if you have specific questions on those, I'm happy to address those maybe in Q&As as we move on down the road a little bit. But if you have questions on it, that is a written piece for sure. Medicare 101, help you get signed up, what everything means, what each part that you're going to have to get to kind of give you the most on it. Estate planning, always one of the most popular ones that we get. The foundation retirement is a wrap up on May 6th. And then on May 8th, we will shoot you. It is a real big comprehensive guide to retirement. It comes in on a fillable PDF platform that can be reused. And we put a lot of energy in it. It was extremely complex to kind of get. So that will be what we do on the first things first. So 15 minutes left. I want to encourage everybody to reach out. Got a real good amount of people on here, a lot of names that some people that I've already had meetings with and talked to, and those kind of things. So let's take a look. One of the attendees said, yeah, do you have a budget template that I can provide? I will, and it will come out to you next week automatically. So look at that. Again, if you miss it, we'll place that on the website, which you can go do that as well. So answer that one live. Any other questions? Feel free on the Q&A or in the chat. I've got them both open now. Give you a couple of seconds to do that. Saw someone raise their hand a minute ago. The way the webinars work, guys, sorry, it would be easier. I'm going to try to figure out a way that we can have our cake and eat it too, to where I can open up the mics. I might end up trying that on the next one, but the webinar template of this makes it a little bit difficult to do. Okay. Let's see. Got a good question. Yes, sir. Surprised to hear you mention Social Security. What does that reliability look like now? Excellent question, Mr. Oliver. Excellent question. Um, First of all, I I have opinions on Social Security just like everybody else. What I can tell you, I think that everybody that is of the age on this call, I feel very strongly that Social Security will be intact for you as it was planned to be. I do think moving forward, there's likely to be some changes to it. I don't think it's going to change anybody in this age demographic, if I were to guess. Um, but I do think that I do think it'll be available. Here's why. The way Social Security, for the most part, works, what everybody hears about when they say that, Social Security, the trust is going to go, it could go to zero. And theoretically, that's true. If there are not some changes that are made in the next few years, the Social Security trust, which is separate from how you receive your Social Security, in the next 10 years could go to zero, might be longer. A lot of that is actuarially speaking and figuring out. But it won't affect the payments that come to you. It can affect some things, but it won't affect the payments because the people, as long as the millennials and the generations below us are working and paying into it, there will be enough people paying into it to pay out all of those that are drawing on it. The millennials are bigger than the baby boomers, believe it or not, in terms of numbers. And it's not because it's because the period of time that covers millennials is bigger. It's not necessarily that we're having more kids. So the trust is important. There's some components to there that do help with cost of living adjustments, that make it a little easier for the government to deploy those. There's some components in terms of disability. The trust is extremely important. I'm not saying that it's not, but in terms of the basics of receiving payments, I am telling everybody to count on it, especially in this age demographic. Now, if there are younger people in your life, I'm 50, and I do think moving forward there are going to be some changes, and I don't know what that is. That's up to the politicians. I think it'll be a combination of things. I kind of hope it is. I think it wouldn't surprise me if retirement age gets moved up again. I wish it wouldn't, but it won't surprise me if that happens. It's low-hanging fruit for politicians, quite frankly. Um, I also wouldn't shock me if there was a tax increase on it, maybe 0.5% to employers, 0.5% to employees, or maybe more to employers and unemployees. I don't know what to figure that out. I've seen lots of variations of like what needs to be done in terms of if they did increase the tax to it to kind of fix everything, and that's all over the place. So I'll just leave that up. You all can research those kind of things on your own. But I know those things will have a benefit. So yes, I think you need to count that as part of your sources of income. If you would like to discount it because you're worried about that, I think that's fair if you want to do that. I'm 50 and I'm not doing that for myself, but I hope that helps a little bit. Another person asked, will we discuss the 4% rule and whether it's still applicable? Yes, Jim, we actually will. On the That is on the one on the first, the live one on the first. Those are withdrawal strategies and distribution strategies. Um, to answer your question, is it still applicable? Sure, I think it is. Um, I think it is for some people more than others, but when I work with participants, it's a quick, it's a really quick gauge depending on how old you are for me to say, like, okay, if you have Social Security of this and you take 4% out from this, this is how much money it's going to be. Is that going to be enough? Number one. Number two, if you're able to do that, if that is enough, the 4% rule generally is still great. But again, I would rather have the specific amount that you're planning on spending. For some people, 4% might be less than what they have in their mind or what they need. For others, it's more or it's enough. And so if you start spending more than that, then you see where I'm going with that, right? Then start spending more than that. Well, then it becomes like, what age are you starting? How long? But in general, if people are in their mid 60s or really, to full retirement age in terms of Social Security, 66, 67, I use the 4% a lot. And I think especially with what life expectancy actually is, I think it works actually quite well. And I use it as a conservative way to look at things oftentimes. Good question, by the way, on that. But we will be discussing that along with about three or four predominantly other withdrawal type strategies. I'll tell you how I approach it in terms of those discussions with people individually. Um, I think your withdrawal strategy definitely points that and your risk allocation when you get to retirement go hand in hand to me, because it's a multiple of what you're planning on spending. And that's, when I say that, in terms of acceptable risk for me or where I would want me personally to be, I'll look at those things, figure out how much I'm spending, how much I'm planning on spending, and then I take a multiple of that, and I want that amount in safety. And then we'll talk about those kind of things for sure. Good questions, though, already. Got another question. How do I find my Social Security benefit date? Currently 64. The easiest way is to create, in general, I think you're going to be in that 66 and 8 month range from just doing it enough. But the best way I can tell you is to create that login through Social Security website. So ssa.gov. And when you log in and pull a statement, it will tell you your full retirement age. It'll tell you, so, at 67 or 66 in 6 months or whatever it is. It will tell you that when you do it. It will tell you the amount and that kind of thing. If you're going to retire before your full retirement age and maybe start using Social Security as part of that, I get that question a lot. Should I take it earlier? That's different for everybody too. It really, there is a break-even analysis calculator when it comes to Social Security. AARP has a couple of free ones that work really well. Your projection of Social Security tool on AARP is actually pretty good as well, that you could also utilize just in terms of the interim before you kind of sign up. But the best way to do it is to sign up on the ssa.gov and those. It will tell you. But in terms of when it comes to taking it earlier, that's different. It depends on really life expectancy expectations in some ways. And some people, my dad didn't retire at 67. He retired at 69 because he wanted to. He could have he could have taken Social Security earlier. He chose, obviously it doesn't make sense to take it early if you're still working for a lot of reasons. But he took it at 67. He's like, I know, he never thought he was going to live really to his upper 70s anyways, and he did get to to 80 anyways, and he was just like, I paid into this thing for my whole life. I'm taking it out. I don't care if it costs me money, even if I'm working. So that everybody has a different playing field in terms of view when it comes to that. Good question. So We got about 4 minutes left. Any other things? Anything that any specifically, y'all done a good job of asking anything specifically someone in mind would like me to cover within those subjects. The other thing to do is if you don't know, as you dig into it and questions come up, write them down, mail it to me, email it to me, ask it during the next webinar. We can address some of that stuff, even if what the content was not live. I'll always take time to kind of do that. But I'm excited that everybody's here. Man, we got a good number of people on the call. Had a couple had to jump off, I'm sure, here already. Really excited. Really, we're really proud of putting this thing together, and it takes a team of us. And we're here to help you guys, here to kind of bring that. And I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're engaging yourself in the process. That is a huge first step. I mean, it's what it really comes down to. So don't discount that any further. I'll give it one more moment for questions. Any more questions? Well, I appreciate you all very much. Thank you for attending. And I will, if there's nothing else, I'll sit on here for a minute or two after if there's nothing else. But thanks for being here. We'll see everybody soon. Oh, one more question. Sorry. Thank you. Snuck in on me there. I'll be interested in figuring out how to handle a pension that increases 3% a year. I agree. Sounds like a good pension, number one. And a lot of people, so still people on this call that will have more pensions outside of their plan, because some of you might have, maybe some of you are in the National Guard, or maybe some of you served in the armed forces and are in a pension that way. But yes, if if yours continues to increase, then you've got some decisions to make. Not only what type of, you need to look into not how much it's increasing, but how you can take that out once you do. Annuity payments with rights of survivorship or lump sum as part of that too. Um, those are questions that are interesting. If you're single or widowed, pensions can only have rights of survivorship to spouses. So maybe you take the lump sum, but that doesn't give you as much spending power as taking the annuity payment. If it's increasing 3% a year, it's really good. But that's what you need to figure out, is what it will look like at X age that you plan to retire, and start from there. Good question, though. I'll be interested in seeing that too. Sounds like a good one. Well, almost 2 o'clock here on the nose. I'm going to let everybody go. Thanks for participating. Reach out with any questions you have. We're really excited to be here and serve you. And I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to more of these. I really do enjoy it. So you all have a great day. Thanks, everybody.